I'm Eli Yokley. I write about politics at Morning Consult, as Ken said. I have been with the company at Morning Consult about as long as we've worked together, so it's great to put those two things together. As we get started, think about it if you have any questions. I'm going to try to save some time at the end. I'd love to kind of go back and forth. I feel like a bunch of numbers is kind of hard to consume. It's a bit easier to go that way. So I'm going to try to move quick through this. So think of anything you guys might have in mind today. Morning Consult, as Ken said, we track what America thinks. We do millions of interviews across the globe, including thousands each day across the United States, to help the leading companies, financial institutions, governments understand what the public thinks. And, my job is to consume that and tell you what we're finding. Today, we're talking about a decade of work we've done for the RFA. It's the longest running tracker of public opinion on ethanol and renewable fuels in the country. This is a great solid data set that you guys have spent time building up over the last decade. And it produces some really interesting results today. Today, we'll go real quick through what we're talking about here. The brand of ethanol is very durable. Things have changed for why people are supportive of it. And then we want to talk about where things stand today. So let's just get right into it. We'll start with the good news here. Ethanol has become more popular in recent years. Among voters who have opinions on this, favorability has grown from 60% back in 2020 to 65% today. That's a pretty good improvement in an environment where things are kind of polarizing and going the other way. This is a pretty durable brand. We track thousands of issues, and finding something with support from 65% of the country is a pretty big deal. What drives this? I think one of the bigger things, obviously, in this moment is affordability. People like things to not be expensive in an inflationary world. But look, they also understand some of the core arguments of your brand, which is some of those fuel efficiency issues. And, of course, this Made in America issue that I think we'll get back to in a bit. The public doesn't support ethanol because they're climate activists. They don't support it for the environment necessarily. The public supports it because it's affordable, efficient, and American. It's something that kind of gets at the core of who the country is. Support for the renewable fuel standard is very solid. Nearly 7 in 10 voters support it. That figure has held very, very steady across all of the waves of the surveys that we've conducted. And it's not really a partisan divisive issue. When you have nearly 2/3 of Republicans and 3/4 of Democrats supporting something, ethanol should run for president here. The renewable fuel standard brings people together. We mentioned this earlier. It has never fallen below. Support for the RFS has never fallen below 58%. But if you look at the trend line that we've got here over our decade of data, we've seen a 10-point increase here since we started doing this. The strong support has also grown a bit here. This is something that those are the numbers we really watch in terms of public engagement, public energy behind an issue, and to see a quarter of people strongly supporting something that some folks might see as not a heavyweight policy issue on the American people's minds, at least, is a pretty good step. So what's changed over the past decade? We know the brand's durable, but let's think about what lies underneath this data. And this is maybe where things get a bit interesting. We love seeing flat line charts at Morning Consult, but still there is support for ethanol's brand. We mentioned this earlier, 5-point increase over the past few years. It doesn't crater. That's durability. This is maybe the most important slide here, and I think it's something that we all should consider here. The gap between crude biofuels and crude oil has shrunk quite a bit since we started doing these surveys. Biofuels started out back in 2016 with an advantage, but today it's tied. And this isn't a moment like of panic or whatever, but it is something that's attention. The perception gap closing is notable. We're the cleaner alternative isn't quite enough anymore for the American people. The whole drill baby drill political push has been pretty good for Wales brand, especially in this affordability moment. That's just the competitive reality here. But the good news here is the data kind of says where this industry has a chance to lean in and make its case better for the American people. The renewable messaging is strong in fuels. If you look at the very favorable, for example, on the following things, ethanol, crude have similar backing. If you look at the total favorability, ethanol is more popular than crude oil is. That is a opportunity here to make the case to the American people. This category framing matters. Whenever people hear renewable fuels, they have a stronger reaction than they do when they hear ethanol, than when they hear biofuels. Leading into the renewable fuels messaging is a place of big opportunity here. Look, gasoline is still popular. It's what people know. But renewable fuels messaging, the framing of your product in that sense, has a real fighting chance in terms of getting at the minds of the American people. So what do voters want? That's the hardest question in the world. We're going to see a bit more of that this year as we look to 2028. But what they think tells, what I want to think about here is how they think about energy and what that tells us about the midterm elections. Voters want options, not mandates. I think you could talk about any public policy issue, from the Obamacare debates to the energy issue, and know this. But look at the kinds of support voters have. E15 availability, RFS support, Flex Fuel Fairness Act. Solid numbers of the American people support these things. EV mandates are 21%. People don't like being told what to do. The voter support, government involvement, and expanding options, they just don't want restrictions. Thinking about 2026, thinking about posturing for 2028 and the campaigns that run through places like Iowa, the more choice is a real winning frame for the American people. By the way, both sides can lean in on this. You talk to Democratic voters and people who trust Democrats even to handle these energy issues, and you see folks care a lot about things more than just the climate, even on the left. These arguments about affordability, these arguments about energy independence, really resonate with the American people, kind of regardless of political party. And so, as the campaign gets going, that underlines a decent opportunity for folks on both sides to try to compete here. This is, I think, a bit of a redundant chart, but it shows the trends here. The carrots are just much more popular with the stick on this issue. Tax credits, chargers, hold support in the low 50s. Bans or mandates are in the 20s. And look, EV interest is pretty flat at 40% for the past 3 years. The public isn't hostile to these things, and they're getting cheaper. I think that more people are considering them, but they just don't want to be told what to drive. And so, in this big affordability issue discussion the American people are having right now, This is the status quo. If it works, is kind of where I think a lot of folks' heads are at. I think I said this before. One thing, if you don't take anything else away, is the biggest number, literally by text size here for you. 9 in 10 voters. Energy independence is a unifier. 9 in 10 voters say energy independence is important. It's one of the highest numbers we track on anything we get here. Ask about immigration, economy, healthcare. You never see numbers in the 80s. I sound like Donald Trump. You never see the numbers in the 80s. 78% of voters, just a bit fewer than this, say renewable fuels like ethanol are important to American energy independence. The public already is making this connection, by the way. That's the point here. The public already connects ethanol to the energy independence story. They're already there. This idea that here is energy independence is the dominant theme. Both parties want to claim it. It's the opening you have anytime you go to Capitol Hill and talk to members of Congress, anytime you talk to politicians. This is a political unifier. The dominance framing is a bit different. That's, I think, the current administration probably likes to say the word dominance. Probably feels stronger. But that kind of framing is pretty divisive. Independence greater than dominance here. That's a 24-point gap. And if you look at the party splits here, 87% of Democrats, 90% of Republicans, that is just like everybody's on the same page. When you start throwing around the word dominance, I think that probably just triggers folks who have priors about how they think about that kind of talk in politics. The dominance is 50% or 50 points more likely to resonate with Republican voters than the Democrats. So independence greater than dominance in terms of how folks think about this. Independence works in every room. Dominance is going to work in some rooms. I think I've said this like 10 times already in the last 15 minutes, but the pocketbook is where voters' heads are at. When you ask the kind of things that people think are important here in our latest survey, 78% say gas price concern. People are thinking about prices a lot. They're thinking about this ethanol independence link, by the way, at about the same level. And they think a lot about fuel made in America. All those things kind of go hand in hand here. So the big picture here. After a decade of this, we know a few things. One, support for ethanol remains strong. This brand is durable. The public is with you. The reasons have shifted, though, and it's moved a bit from environmental to economic and patriotic concerns and framing. That's not a loss, by the way. That's the coalition is stronger and more diverse. And in a moment where coalitions are shifting in American politics for political officials, this is a pretty good that is a pretty good opportunity for a group like this. Third, this category advantage over crude oil has shifted, but the frame that pulls everyone in here is energy independence. That's the lane this year. That's the lane as we think about the 2028 political landscape moving forward. Before I open up the questions, I just want to kind of broaden out just a little bit on the political landscape here. Energy is going to be just a top-tier issue this year. We're already seeing this. It's the number 3 priority concern for voters behind the cost of living and healthcare costs. This is a big deal for people, especially with concerns about domestic production just more broadly. I mean, think about the discussion about AI data centers, infrastructure reshoring. All of this is driving demand in other parts of industry, of the energy industry, and voters are going to be concerned about all types of energy at the same time. I mean, whenever people survey on this, there's not a lot of differentiation necessarily between how they think about various fuels. I mean, gas prices go up and down at different points, but at some point you're thinking about what it costs to power your lives, and so that marks a moment of like political risk here, just as voters are concerned about energy more broadly. But the bigger point here is like these kinds of issues are going to be top of mind this year. The only risk here is complacency. Forgetting to engage or not being active, not talking to members of Congress, not keeping this issue top of mind obviously is a danger point. But you guys aren't doing that. You guys are here and fighting hard. This message of independence is strong. Pocketbook issues all thrive with voters, and you guys are at kind of the center of that in a pretty solid way. So, well, thank you guys.